WNST. Talent issues, and of course this week the NFL Combine meets out in Indianapolis. Here's a guy that is a big watcher of the, they call them the Underwear Olympics, Dennis Kolatzis. You know, they're out there, they're poking, they're prodding, they're questioning, they're running, they're sprinting, they're catching. This is the beginning of all the things we've talked about with the problems with the Ravens, with Ozzie Newsome, for John Harbaugh, for Joe Ortiz, and for Eric DeCosta. This is where they need to start looking at who is going to be in Indianapolis this week that 5 or 6 years from now is a part of a championship team here in Baltimore at some point, right?
Yep, no question about it, man. They take a close look at these players, make sure they're 6 foot versus 5'11", make sure the hands are 10 inches versus 8.5. Make sure that these players have explosion and are as advertised. This is a place where players can make money or lose money in the process. They train hard for it. They train specifically for this event, and anything could happen. But it will address their draft status, no question about it.
So much is tied together here, right? I mean, with free agency coming down the pikes, there's so many guys, and Luke and I have talked about this, so many players that you look at and you say, all right, what's the cap number? What would the cap savings be? And can I replace that football player? And, boy, you can go through both sides of the ball right now, and I guess other than Flacco and a couple of the guys that are young and we're still, let's call them emerging at this point. I remember when Brandon Williams was emerging. Now they're on the cusp of losing him. Same thing with Rick Wagner. Obviously the Zach Orr loss is tremendous for them because that was one position they felt like they had locked up with a real quality football player who was under control. Before they get to the combine, to the draft, they got to look at free agency, and that's, I would think a lot of that's decided in their mind to some degree, but the next 10 days are going to be huge for this organization.
Yeah, they're going to be huge. I mean, inside linebacker was not a glaring need, was not a need at all. In fact, for the Ravens with C.J. Mosley and Zachary Orr. But now if Reuben Foster from Alabama drops, if he's there at 16, because the quarterbacks, they mess up every draft. They cause a lot of good players to slide down. Is that the player they take at 16? So every mock draft I looked at has a different player from a defensive end to running back to wide receiver to cornerback to safety. I mean, they can go in several different ways. Of course, they also have another pick for the loss of Kelechi Assembly. They have the 99th overall pick in the draft. 4 picks in the first 3 rounds, Nestor, and now the compensatory picks can be traded. They can move up to get the player they want, but they've got to come up with some really good players because, as you mentioned, they have holes and heat on both sides of the ball.
Are you expecting them to lose the guys they have? Are you expecting Brandon Williams to not be here? I know we got together with him. I saw him posting Monster Truck Jam videos on Facebook over the weekend. He loves it here. I mean, he made no bones about that with us when he visited with us at the Super Bowl a couple of weeks ago. Feels like about a year ago now, the Super Bowl, but it was only 3 weeks ago. And in this situation, when these guys get to market, it usually doesn't go well, right?
Nope, not at all. That's the whole thing. The Ravens are saying the right things. He's saying the right things. But at the end of the day, when all these other teams come knocking on his door, plus they have Robert Pierce right behind him, and that guy's another big-bodied defensive tackle. I don't know that they can't replace that run-stuffing defensive tackle. They do have capable guys. Carl Davis is also there to replace them. Same thing with Rick Wagner. Rick Wagner, you know what Ozzie says, right player, right price. He's not going to overpay for Brandon Williams or Wagner. Now Wagner wants a max contract. Williams has said he'll give him a slight discount, but he's not going to give the house away. He's not going to leave millions of dollars on the table. $500,000 maybe, but he ain't leaving millions on the table, and he shouldn't. But that's why they get paid the big money in Nestor, to fit everybody under the cap and bring back the guys that should come back.
Well, and in this case, the awakening this weekend was the Matt Elam thing, right? I don't know where you were when you got the WNST text. Of course, sponsored by Coons Ford Security Boulevard. I was on a Qantas aircraft. We landed at Los Angeles at 6 in the morning, Pacific time, and my wife turned her phone on, and the text started coming in, bling, 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 and looked down, and she holds the phone up to me, and there's the WNST text. Matt Elam, selling drugs. Drugs aside, and whatever that is, just getting on the football field and all that we go through at the Combine and talking about these guys, Matt Elam has to be the biggest bust that the Ravens have ever had, right?
Yeah, you know what? He's a very good athlete too. You know, he can actually play ball. But my initial reaction when I saw the text come through was former Ravens safety Matt Elam, and shortly thereafter the Ravens came out that, of course, it said they had no plans for him on the football team in 2017. What can you say? First round draft pick. I mean, coveted by many, picked by the Ravens, never lived up to his billing, and for him to go down this way now, he puts his entire career at jeopardy, never mind the one he had with the Ravens.
You know, it is amazing that you and I have been through two of these championships, right? I mean, back in '01 and, of course, 4 years ago now. And you feel like a lot of these guys were there on the ride, right? Because it feels like, well, you know, they were here. They weren't. You know, Brandon Williams was not. Matt Elam, you know, the reason he was drafted last in the first round was they won a championship. So for Matt Elam's career here, he doesn't know from winning, really. That New England game aside, 3 years ago when they had the lead, they don't have that. Well, we had a parade and we went to New Orleans, and there's a lot of guys banging around here that the jury is still out on them. And Matt Elam would be sort of candidate number one to say, well, maybe this is one of the reasons we haven't been to the playoffs 3 out of 4 years, because guys like him not only didn't just get on the field and become ordinary players or even below the bar players, just a guy that couldn't get on the field.
But the biggest irony here is that his older brother, Abe Elam, he played safety in the NFL. He went to Notre Dame, Kent State, played for the Jets, the Browns, and the Cowboys, was a model citizen, never was in trouble. Now, Matt was supposed to be a better prospect, a better athlete than Abe. And you know what? As it turns out, Abe's going to have a better NFL pro career than the younger brother did. But again, when these guys get involved with these type of things in the offseason, that's why character's got to be up there, Nestor, as the Ravens evaluate these players, their background, who are they hanging out with, what are they like off the field, because that investment goes down the hill. I mean, this is a guy that was supposed to replace Ed Reed, or at least give you some relief, some presence on the field, and he's never been able to stay on that field.
Well, that's been the hardest part with the safety position as well as the tight end position. When you look back over the last 5, 6, 7 years, how much they've tried on draft day, obviously with Ben Watson in the offseason last year, from all of the Huffs and all the different guys they've gone through at that safety position. It's been very, very difficult to draft at those positions and to get guys on the field.
Yeah, it really has. Now, there's a couple of safeties in this year's draft, Malik Hooker and Jamal Adams. Again, they're top 10 guys. Now, if one of these cats slides down, they will jump all over them, I hope. But again, with the Ravens, recently their history, even with Bama players, they shied away from some Alabama players that they should have drafted. But look, they're all over the board, but they're under pressure. As we know, they've got to produce, they've got to perform. They've got to give John Harbaugh guys that are NFL ready, that can get off the field. You got to get at least 2 starters, I would think, in your first 4 picks, and at least 2 capable backups on the upside. I would think that if I'm Steve Bisciotti, that would be my directive to Ozzie Newsome and to Eric DeCosta. Get me players that impact guys that can get on the field right away. I don't care who they are; just get them on the field.
Are you saying they should have drafted Ha-Ha?
They should have drafted Ha-Ha. They should have drafted Landon Collins. There are players that they've missed on in the past that they should have taken versus the guys that they took. There are some Bama players. O.J. Howard is a tight end. Now, I don't know what our needs are in tight end. There was supposed to be all-world on paper last year, and everybody got hurt. If he's available at 16, is he a game changer on offense? 6'6", 250, can run like a deer, and maybe give Joe Flacco another target. Is that the guy? I mean, I don't know. They're all over the place, Nestor. It's going to be interesting, but that's why we have the combine to crystallize what they're going to do. And I know the Ravens, they will not. If a player's got a really good combine, they will not improve his draft position, but they will drop him if the guy doesn't run as fast as they thought he would, or doesn't lift as much weight, or doesn't show enough explosion.
I find it interesting that they have so many needs at this point. It's not like they're 3-13 and you just say we're going to take the best player.
Yeah.
And look, Ozzie always says we're going to take the best player, and he's proven that at various points where they have drafted in a position where they've already had a player. Mm-hmm. But throughout this roster, that whenever that pick comes up, there's going to be 5 or 6 different ways they can go in regard to positioning, right?
Absolutely. To me, if they can get a safety, because you can always throw away from a corner, you can't throw away from a safety, which is why Tom Brady used to check to see where Ed Reed was on the field at all times. If they can get a safety at 16, they should get a safety. If not, they've got to get a cornerback, because Jimmy Smith, with his injuries lately, he's not reliable. You've got to be able to stop the pass these days. Had Jimmy Smith been healthy for the Pittsburgh game, maybe for the Giants game, maybe for the Cowboys game, maybe the Ravens would have won one, two, or possibly all three of those games. You've got to get a shutdown corner to place opposite of him or Tavon Young, who really shined as a rookie last year.
Dennis Kolotzis joining us here from Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Of course, they sponsor our WNST Tech service. It is our best service, and if you were on it, you got the Matt Elam news first. And, of course, Thursdays, Dennis will be here from 3 until 5, driving you home, bringing you home. And first of all, I want to talk a little Terps with you before I get to what's going on out at Coons Ford, because I hope things are going better, at your dealership than they are for Turge right now.
They are.
It is, ever since I left, 2-5, and
you
now
never left. It's your fault. That's it.
It has been getting blamed on me. I'll tell you. So a couple people hit me on Twitter and told me that, but. For me, the notion that they are going to have to play hard and long and fast here leading up to this Big Ten tournament just to get into the tournament at this point is disturbing when you consider 20-2 and 22-4, right?
No, absolutely. They're in a downward trend. They've showed that they can't play with the big boys, and this team right now, they're reeling. There's no fire in this team, and Coach Surgeon, he's got to figure out a way to get them up.
Well, we'll see if we can get that going here against Rutgers and the likes of that before the week's over. Big Michigan State game and Big Ten championship down in D.C. That's going to be a fun weekend. I think Luke and I are going to head down there next week.
Nice. It should be a blast for sure.
What's going on out of Coons Ford Security Boulevard?
Just closing out a month right now at Nestor and beginning another month. It's going to be gangbusters around here. Big rebates and discounts by us and Ford Motor Company, Ford Motor Credit. Still offering 0% for 72 months. Lots of money in the hood. Lots of great late model trade-ins. Body shop, service department, parts. Everybody just mobbed. And we're getting a lot of repeat and referral business. So I do appreciate that. All of our friends out there, friends of Coons Ford and also WNST, just keep them coming. And we save everybody thousands of dollars here every single day. You
know what's amazing is I'm halfway around the world. I was in Christchurch, New Zealand, where they had this horrific earthquake. Dan, I've never seen anything like, every other building's missing. Everyone was affected by it, obviously. But I was walking back to my hotel, my bed and breakfast from downtown, and I had a little coffee, a little muffin, and I walked right past the Ford dealership, right on the corner there. Mm-hmm. And I was going to take a little selfie and, throw you a picture of me at, some Ford dealership halfway around the world. But, we talk about the Ford Motor Company, man. There was no place in Australia or New Zealand where I'm driving a car, and they're not driving American cars over there. On the wrong side of the road, on the wrong side of the dash as well, by the way.
Well, you got to dodge kangaroos and gators and stuff like that. All the and the venomous snakes you see out there on the outback.
Just don't hit the koalas, man. They're so cute.
They're adorable. Eucalyptus trees everywhere, right?
Hey, absolutely. You can smell them before you see them. When you smell the eucalyptus, you're like, all right, well, I know there's a koala around here somewhere. Hey, it's great having you on. We'll check in again with you on Thursday from 3 until 5, and we'll see what the Ravens have up their sleeve here, right?
Thanks a lot. Be well.
You got it. Dennis Kolotzis of Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. He is the SSV on WNST. You can follow him out on Twitter and always get in touch with him out at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. He'll be here on Thursday as well. I'm back from Australia, back from New Zealand, keeping an eye on the Terps, and obviously the Orioles even playing a little television game on Monday. They took care of us with a Yankee game en masse. And thank you, Mr. Angelos. You can find me anywhere the internet is served out there on Facebook Live, as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel, and of course, nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am a very available individual. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.